Hi, my name is Brett, and I have been a vegan now since 2014. Initially, I went vegan simply because back when I was around seventh grade-ish, I was walking home from school one day, and I thought to myself, like, okay, so why do we eat animals and harm them if it is morally incorrect to harm animals? So I kind of thought about it, and eventually I came to the conclusion that it was just like, it's an inevitability. We have to do it because it is necessary. And so I just kind of left it at that for years and years and years. And I'm walking into my third year of college, and my girlfriend at the time was vegetarian, and she was like, well, you don't have to eat animals. And I was like, well, yeah, you do. And she was like, well, then why am I not dead? So that was compelling. And I was like, well, I'll be vegetarian, but I won't be vegan. And that's kind of like, whatever. But then like a couple of months later after that, we kind of cooperatively came to the conclusion that it's like, well, it's the harm that's the problem. It's not eating their flesh that's the problem. So you can't steal or take their products without harming them. It's not possible. So in order to actually live by what I thought was moral, it was simply necessary to become vegan and live that kind of like, okay, I don't have to. And I'd also found that I wouldn't die. I wouldn't be unhealthy. I wouldn't have any sort of dip in cognitive ability. I wouldn't have any sort of muscle wasting or anything like that. It just, things were fine. I was okay. I didn't die. After I went vegan, to kind of play into that, I didn't really notice any major physiological, emotional, or any other sort of changes. I mean, I'd suffered in the past with some anger issues, which I wasn't dealing with at the time, or I hadn't moved through at the time, but they weren't really present on the horizon. I guess I didn't think enough about my health to really say that there was an appreciable difference. Aside from the fact that I felt that I was kind of living more to my own moral character, I can't really think of any physiological changes that transpired at the time. So I think the most important reason for me in this 7 years later, I've gone through all of the times of maybe-ism and of doing it by measure. And I think the most important reason to do it now is because in order to be in line with myself morally and to convey to others that, and especially people who I know, people who I respect, people who I care about, how to convey to them that they can also live by their morals and values, and that they can also do that. Not only do I have to be vegan in my action, I also have to be vegan in my word. I have to convey that and show that I am living morally consistently. I'm happy, I'm healthy, and that's something that's breachable, that's approachable for others. People can get off that desert island that they say they're on, that they aren't trapped in the middle of Malaysia with 2 coconuts and a pig. They're here, they're now. They're in this moment. They're not experiencing by proxy this trauma that's been presented to them by hypotheticals, but rather a real situation that they can actively participate in. In that sense, I have to sort of exist and live that example so that when they are presented with me, when they're presented with this aberration to their own sort of idea about the way that they exist in the world, that they have to see that it's possible, that I have to be that person, or that I can be that person. The pragmatics of why I would recommend that somebody else be vegan, and not just in diet, not just plant-based, but I mean, even for that person trapped on that island in the middle of the ocean, why, even if not in action, that in mind they should be vegan, it's because at this stage in the game, we don't want to rely on our own personal system of cruelty. We don't want to have to exist in a place where we're ambivalent or that we are apathetic to the things that go on around us. And if we're willing to go through the motions of, well, it's okay that instead of going to the vegan turkey, I go to the animal-based turkey, and I'm able to make that's a choice that I just make, and it's that level of convenience that somebody can come to that conclusion. It shows just like how misconstrued the rest of the world is to that individual, that they are phobic. Specific examples are people that I've interacted with are phobic of eating the vegan food, that they say, I can't, I won't, I shouldn't. For a host and a multitude of reasons that if they just sat and thought with them for longer than 5 minutes, they would realize are absurd. And I think it's important that people live in good faith, that they don't make these, well, plants feel pain too arguments that are in poor faith. Or if you were trapped on a desert island, these would you-isms that they desperately try to, in seemingly bad faith, prove that making something that is a right conscientious choice is somehow insurmountable. I imagine that I've lived that way before, and I didn't enjoy living that way, and I don't think anybody else enjoys living that way, where they have to subject themselves every day to cognitive dissonance, that they have to subject themselves every day to moral inconsistency. The primary challenges that I've run into since committing not only to just personal veganism, but also to a more active veganism, I never would really say that it's ever been looking for food. It's always been incredibly easy for me to do so. I've never had trouble finding like people, because it's the age of the internet. If you want to make friends with somebody, just be online for about 10 minutes and you'll find somebody who's been procedurally added to your friends list. The hardest thing for me was going to my family and saying to them, you raised me to be a morally consistent person. You raised me to be somebody who cares about the environment. You raised me to be somebody who cares about the world around them. And how are you missing this? How are you missing this one key factor? This one thing that, and the easiest thing in the world. I watched a video with my dad the other day, and it was about how 50% of the world's plastic pollution comes from large-scale, commercial fishing operations. And it's like, how do you look at this and say, well, I also care about, recycling my plastic. I think that it's important to throw away plastic bags, when that represents such a minuscule element of what matters. Just sort of having to have that conversation not happen. It's one of the things that I really like when I talk about my veganism with either kids that I've tutored or kids that I've interacted with in the past in teaching, where it's a lot easier to just kind of say to them well, this thing is moral, right? And they're like, yeah. Then why do you do it? Well, because I don't have control over what I put in my body. I don't have control over what I put on my plate. It doesn't matter what's right or wrong. With them, it's very easy to kind of broach that topic, but it seems that with people you love and people you care about, these people that you know so well, and you have so many years of dialogue with them, but when it comes to this new piece of information that you try to convey to them, it's just shut down. It's nothing. So there are kind of a lot of ways that I kind of work at it, and they all at spreading veganism and talking about veganism. And I guess probably the most obvious one for me is just kind of posting that I am, not being afraid to talk about it. Very much, if somebody wants to talk about it, if somebody wants to make a dumb PETA meme, if somebody wants to make a plants feel pain thing, I don't shy away from it. I just convey that conversation to them. And I'm willing to have it. And the difficulty is, it's I never really know how effective that is. How how much of what I say is planting a seed? It's so hard to pin down a metric of, did it work? The only time I know that anything I've ever done has not worked is when it doesn't work, and when I know that it doesn't work because there are people I know who are not vegan. I guess there've been a number of things, like doing kind of the posting on Facebook saying, hey, this is bad, or posting on any of the socials and saying this is bad, has had slight effectiveness. A lot of people talk about being more conscientious of the things. Having those direct conversations, people are generally more conscientious of things. Telling people that I won't eat with them if they're eating the bodies of animals has been fairly effective, at least at, I guess, saving wholesale lives. I guess, like, at the end of the day, that's what's important, I guess, is like, just, if somebody's not eating an animal, it means that an animal gets to live, which is important. Gone out, done activism, done those sorts of things, which I enjoy, and I enjoy the process of convincing other vegans to think about the way they interact with others more seriously too, and so they can kind of behave in this same similar way. Doing that with cubes of truth, holding up signs, going to protests, those sorts of large-scale activities where you really get to, like, interact with other vegans, other activists, other people who are like, I've been vegan 6 weeks. Tell me what I can do more. Tell me what you've found successful, what you haven't found successful, the laundry list of things. And I guess that's helpful in its own way. Keeping accountability in online spaces of people who are like, I'm thinking of not being vegan for X, Y, or Z reason. Kind of dialoguing with them about why they are thinking those things, what emotions they're feeling. And I guess that's important too. I guess it's effective, but it's hard to say. Like, I can't read the hearts of others. I can just read my own. So within the context of direct action everywhere, so I got involved with this organization because in other organizations, sometimes picketing and pamphleting and doing those sorts of things seems like there's no real, like, goal to it. There's no ends. You just sort of do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it. And you hope that at the end of the day, something happens. But what I really hope to accomplish, especially working with and learning from DXC, is like, okay, how does this turn into the law? How does this turn into social change? How can I work with other social change groups to make this, rather than just some personal dinner table conversation, into something that affects, the world? Something that doesn't just rely on me discussing and breaking my back and doing what I can to just get one more person to not eat one more animal. And it's more like, okay, how can we fix a system that has normalized this activity for so long that the discussion of it causes confusion rather than causing clarity? Like, well, why wouldn't I eat pigs? Why wouldn't I eat cows? And kind of broaching it in the direction of now I'm getting involved in something that, like, I know that there's a goal, there's an end, there's a finish line that I don't have to cross simply by not handing out that last flyer, but rather by being like, okay, once this legislation gets passed, once these lives are saved, actual, tangible, physical lives that you can hold in your arms, rather than hypothetical lives that you save via statistics that you can't just put into a spreadsheet. Do I have any regrets? No. People make the decisions. Like, I think that when lots of vegans have regrets, the kind of general answer is, I wish I'd gone vegan sooner. But I don't necessarily resonate with that idea, because that gives the idea that at some point some pieces of information was given to them that just unlocked the door. They got it, they figured it out, they're all good. Rather than kind of viewing life and decision making as this continuity of choices that we make. I regret every mistake I've made. I regret every time I didn't read a label right, and that somehow violence ended up in my shopping bag, or I ended up on my plate, because I wasn't careful. And that's just simply that's the failing there, is that when I looked and I saw the mushroom burger and my brain just thought that's mushrooms and fake cheese and vegan bread, and I just looked at it and I was like, I made a poor choice. So when everything went right except I wasn't careful, that's my biggest regret. I think the reason I didn't go vegan sooner is because the stars hadn't aligned. Realistically, I had my moral stance on it, one that had been curated by years of interacting with the meat and dairy industry, flooding my television, flooding my schools, flooding my everything, and telling me, if you ain't got milk, you're dead, kid. And that was the rule. Literally when my girlfriend at the time told me, oh, we're gonna eat vegetarian in the house, I verbatim said, well, I'm not going vegan. And that was just weeks before I did. And also, yeah, like I kind of had that thought beforehand that it was just like, if I do this, I'll die. I felt it was a very life or death situation. I felt this sense of existential dread, like I don't want to die. I don't want to I don't want to be washed up on some shore and die because I won't eat the pig, and then I realized I'm in the real world. I'm in a place where that's not the case. I don't worry about any more specific nutrients than I did before. Most folks, so when I was in college, I had a professor who I took this class kind of on an accident. It was a biology class at UNT. It was Mr. Burleson. And he was explaining all of the different proteins that make up humanity and all the different nutrients that make up humanity. And he sort of described where they came from and how they came to be. And that was really the first time I'd ever even thought about it, even when I was carnist. I've never even followed up on it. I think he's vegan. I don't know. There was a twinkle in his eye when I was eating in the vegan cafeteria one time, and I'm like, maybe? But I don't know. Like some sort of vegan fairy godmother. It came to it when everybody was asking me questions about it. It was just like, oh yeah, all of the stuff that you buy that's prepackaged in the supermarket anyway is all fortified with it. So it's not like the 70s. It's not like bacterial supplements and tofu. It's like you can down a glass of your favorite plant beverage. I just eat what I like. My favorite food in the world's cucumbers because they're sweet and easy to eat. And I just eat one of those every once in a while. Otherwise, I just grab, make some spaghetti if I'm in the mood for spaghetti, make some lasagna if I'm in the mood for lasagna, make a roast wheat block, roast tofu, roast vegetables, roast whatever. Sometimes I am in the mood just to kind of like go to a vegan restaurant and just eat there just for the sake of the experience. But I don't really have a go-to because it's all just like I eat what I want to. If I want a burger, I get a burger, It's like, again, it's not the age of tofu anymore. My relationship with food has always been like one of hedonism. I don't eat because I need to survive. I eat because I want to. As I'm getting on in years, I suppose I should probably focus a little bit more on, long-term investments in health. But I'm 30, I'm fine. Just give me a robot body in like 60 years and, whatever. Upload me to the Matrix or whatever. There's kind of two categories. There's one group, which is I already have a meal plan that I go to, and I'm already doing these things that, like, I know when I go into the grocery store, I know what I'm doing, and I'm intentionally doing what I'm doing. And for them, I would recommend just kind of find somebody to find things you like with. Go find somebody who you enjoy experimenting with new things with. Try new things. Make it a concerted effort to be like, I'm going to try this and do this. And I guess at the end of the day, also remember that, like, whatever you're doing, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. But as we all kind of know, it's not like an all-sum game. You just do what you can. Try to be as good as you can be. Find people who support you in doing what you can to be good. And on the other hand, there are people who don't have any idea what they're doing when they go to the grocery store. They are food illiterate and just generally are literate about the things around them. Just learn how to cook some vegan stuff and then just do it. And then there's that kind of, it's an easier kind of transition, because I think for a lot of people, it's a very hard kind of notion to go from, I'm doing this because it's the right thing and I care about animals. It's like a very strong concept, and it's kind of like a periphery. I will then therefore eat vegan. Or there are some people who it's even like they don't care because they're incapable of caring. But I do think both of these people can find consolidarity in the fact that, just do your best whenever you get out your wallet, because that's where your power for veganism initially lies. But past that point, then have conversations with the people about why you should care about more. And if you do care about something, think about how veganism in turn plays with that. Like, if you care about the environment, this should be one of the first things on your plate. If you believe in social equity, food security, and those sorts of things should also be on your plate. It always terrifies me when activists think that they don't have time for veganism, because all the time that veganism takes is the same amount of time you were spending in the store anyway. It doesn't require any extra thought, doesn't require laying your life on the line against police, it doesn't require doing any of these things that are so important in other movements too. Of course we want others to do this in veganism. Of course it's super important, but it's something you can and with almost no change to your initial schedule. If you are an organizer for any other social movement, whether or not it's Black Lives Matter or the March for Women's Rights, and you're a huge organizer in that, and I know you'll spend 70 hours a week doing that because it's a long process. And we have people doing the same for veganism. But at the end of the day, the only choice that you have to make is just what you do when you purchase something. Can you do these other things? Yeah. It has the most intersectional capacity, because I know, and out there to all activists who know that everybody has a finite amount of time in the world, that everybody has a finite amount of, I can put all of my life into this. This is the most do nothing intersectional movement that you can participate in. And we will accept you with open arms, and it will provide so much more to your movement as well. So the resources I suggest, Challenge 22 I think is still a thing. Just get on there online and just talk to somebody and be like, hey, how do I buy stuff in my small town? And if they're bad, just get another one. I've recommended it to a few people, especially guys in college who just don't really have a lot of grocery literacy. And it's just a really easy way to just kind of throw somebody at somebody and just sort of have them either click or not. And it helps build good patterns. Another good resource, which seems really obvious, is just going on Facebook and just making friends in a vegan group. There are all sorts of weird permutations of where people are at, but at the end of the day, you're going to find somebody who's on the same page as you. And if you want to keep moving forward with that and have any number of people help you, there's going to be somebody there who will not only want to help you, but will also feel super good about it. Most people who do any sort of activism or any sort of talking about the things that they really care about love to talk about the things that they care about. So just finding somebody online who cares is a really easy way for it. Easiest other resource I would say is Googling recipes and stuff. Or I guess the trademark for you is searching the recipes on the internet. Reaching out to local chapters of activism groups. If you're somebody who is vegan and you're kind of I'm sick and tired of just kind of being the odd one out, reaching out to local chapters of any number of groups of vegan activists. It doesn't matter if you disagree with one. It doesn't matter if you disagree with 5. There's got to be one out there that matches whatever other weird fringe beliefs you might have. And because vegans are human people, we do weird human things. So you'll eventually find your kin in veganism at some point. But other than that, just going to the grocery store and buying stuff that makes you happy. Like, if you like chocolate, go get vegan chocolate. If it is a comfort food, you can find it. Like, one of my big comfort foods is like yams and marshmallows on, like, fall harvest holiday. Yeah, I just made it with vegan stuff, and it took me 0 extra seconds because I just grabbed this one instead of this one. I'm glad that you've taken the time to listen to me. I guess if you've got a weird hang-up about a particular vegan in general, don't worry about it. Like I said, there are all sorts of weird people in whatever sort of weird system that you're in. So if you're like, I hate all vegans because of that person, it's like saying that you hate a large group of people for the actions of one person, for one obnoxious person in any situation. It may work in the short term as far as a reliable source of feeling good about not doing something, but in the long term, it's kind of stupid, I guess. If I have to do something, of course I will do it because I'm obligated to do so. I have to do it. I'm thinking about the sum total of all sorts of situations that I could potentially find myself in. And I think about, well, how am I prepared for this? So, okay, let's say I'm traveling across the United States. What's the worst thing that could happen? I get stuck out in the wilderness and I starve. If I find myself in a situation where I'm trapped in the wilderness, things are going wrong, I mean, either A, I can make the active choice because I believe that that is something that might happen to me and prepare for it. Take an emergency survival class. Take a class on outdoorsmanship in the areas that you might go to. You'll have a really great time, and you'll find that at the end of the day, most of the time you're going to be digging for roots. And you're going to be eating nuts and seeds and things that don't run away. And you'll survive, because those have the caloric density to suffice you. Secondarily to that, if you're going somewhere across the ocean and you're like, oh, I might crash land in Polynesia and die if I don't eat fish, take a class on that too. Have some fun. Take these obsessions with the what ifs and turn them into a fun activity. You don't just have to be a doomsday prepper because you're scared of an incongruent world. You can have fun with it and take a class. Maybe learn something new about you and the world around you. So would I have to eat animals? To the best of my knowledge, anywhere that I could feasibly end up at this moment, I wouldn't have to. If somebody tricked me into eating animal products, well, got me. I've been bamboozled, but I mean, that's the same as anything. If somebody was like, oh, if you had to, would you kill a child? It's like, well, I don't know. I've never had to kill a child before. It's like these weird hypothetical situations where it's like you're focused so much on this weird hypothetical argument that you don't realize how absurd and unrealistic that argument becomes. And I guess a lot of other vegans also answer this question as in like, well, I've never been in a situation where I've had to, so I can't answer that question in good faith, which is true. But I also understand that there are those of you out there who do very much like to entertain these sorts of thoughts, and that's where I'm at. But I also take that extra step, have some fun with it.